Hello folks, and welcome to Fleet's Random Ramblings. Now it may surprise you to learn, but yes, your sights do not deceive you. It is in fact what might be termed an extra ramblings. Then again, I did say this was coming, but hey, there you go. See if anybody was paying attention. They may not. They may have been. They may not have been. Let me just very quickly let the fine folks on Patreon know what's going on. So they know what the score is. And once they know that, then we're going to be A-okay. There we go. Do that. Do that. Do that. There we go. Okay. That's that. Extra ramblings is here. Very nice. It is nice I can stream in HD now. It's fantastic. Although, to be fair, with ramblings, you're just looking at a screen. So it's not really much of anything to look at, but hey-ho. So, yep, no questions please, and I am now going to start. I'm going to pull up the document. Where is it? Should be here somewhere. Should be here somewhere. Where? I'm sure I got sent the Did he send me the thing? Like, I hope he did. I'm trying to find it. I'm sure. Unless it was the Dragon Foxo thing that he sent. Ah, here we go. Got it. Right. Okay. So. Yeah. No, Timu, you were there on Monday. This is the catch-up ramblings. I'm doing the catch-up ramblings just for a bit, possibly for an hour or two. So, from so did that. So, bear in mind, I don't have the actual questions from the people who asked them. I only have the questions themselves. So, if you know, if you know if you ask the question, so you'll know if I've answered it. Bear in mind, currently it's just me. I am starting somewhat late, I will admit, because, well, I had to take a power nap because I was absolutely shattered from work. This will probably only be an hour for this one. And tomorrow will probably be the big one. So I'm going to try and work through as many questions as I can. So Thoughts on the US Navy looking at the HPV shell for the 5-inch gun? HPV shell. What is the HPV shell? I am really not in a good state for this. I did not realize how knackered I was going to be on Friday. Oh, I have velocity projectile for the 5-inch gun. Oh! Well, I think it's a decent utility if they can get it to work for decent cost. It'll give the 5-inch gun some additional kick, which is not a bad thing. But apart from that, I don't really have any further opinions on it either way. What went wrong with the Royal Navy with the sinking HMS Sheffield? Mistakes on the Royal Navy side, skill of the Argentines. Well, there's no denying the Argentinian Air Force displayed massive skill, conducting both anti-ship missile strikes and dumb bomb attacks and rocket attacks on Royal Navy vessels, both in open sea and in San Carlos water. HMS Sheffield, I don't know the exact specifics of her sinking. I don't think the RN made too many mistakes. As in, not mistakes that could have been... Like, you would have to have the benefit of hindsight to have the Royal Navy not make them. But I think a good chunk of the credit has to go to the Argentinian pilots who delivered that missile strike. But that's just me for now. Do you think the Avro Shackleton and the Nimrod are better maritime patrol aircraft than the P-3 Orion? I think it's horses for courses. I think the Shackleton is worse in every respect than the P-3 Orion. The P-3 Orion is just a more modern aircraft. It's a better platform. It's got better range, better performance, better weapon set. Just better than the Avro Shackleton. The Nimrod is a different kettle of fish entirely, because the Nimrod is very much a... So the P-3 Orion can pivot into any role. The Nimrod is... It's one of those weird things where... Nimrod's faster, but it is a slightly older airframe. It's not quite as robust as the P-3 Orion, but it is much faster than the P-3 Orion is. That is about right. I'm not ill, I'm just tired. I've just woken up from my 2-hour power nap I needed to have to actually do this. Okay. What was the relation between Finland and Allies during the continuation war? As far as I'm aware, Finland was never at war with the Allies, because Finland was not part of the Axis. They were a co-belligerent with the Reich during the continuation war. Finland was not a German ally. Finland was a German co-belligerent. Big difference there. They were fighting on the same side during a war and cooperated. They were not part of a formal alliance. Finland was not at war with the Western powers, as far as I'm aware. Why didn't the RAF consider a unified large caliber machine gun arrangement like the US instead of a weird mix of rifle caliber machine gun and cannon? For the same reason that most other nations went with machine gun and cannon. Because they didn't... They had cannon, they had rifle caliber machine gun, but they didn't really have a workable caliber to, in home production, most European nations, to put into fighter aircraft, and they didn't for some time. The Germans came out with a 13mm later on, but even then, all the 13mm did was replace the 7.62. There was still mixed cannon and machine gun. Basically, it's just down to different arrangements. The US decided to go with large caliber machine guns because that was what they had. They didn't have a cannon for aircraft use, but they had a 50 cal, so they went with that as their step up from rifle caliber machine gun fire. The European powers had automatic cannon and rifle caliber machine gun. So the step up was obvious. You add in automatic cannon to give you the heavy punch, and you keep rifle caliber machine gun for pestering and when you're not quite sure you're going to hit your target.
It also be noted that when the RAF tested the 50 cals, they really didn't like them because they didn't have the punching power of the 20mm or the volume of fire of the 303s.
Yeah.
The RAF thought they were a poor halfway house. Yeah, I don't know why I was muted.
Dragon, how do I do that? How do I check off what I've answered? Oh, hang on. Oh, there we go. There we go. There we go. Okay.
Literally made it so that you can edit the document.
There we go. Done that. Done that. Done that. Done that. Question: what was the intended target for the Iowa's nuclear shell? Enemy service combatant armor divisions. The intended target for the Iowa's nuclear shell was just to, I see enemy fleet, I don't want to anymore. Full salvos. They were supposed to be full
also
salvo.
had a time fuse on it.
Yeah, it was supposed to be full salvo, spread across an entire enemy surface action group. That was the point.
It was essentially anti-everything. So it had a time fuse so it could be used against aircraft as well.
Yeah.
It was just you see that thing? I don't want to see that thing, shell. Which is fair enough.
Why did the Army, presumably the US Army, choose fitting Sidewinder for land-based missiles instead of developing other types of land-based anti-aircraft missiles for self-propelled vehicles? Because the Sidewinder works. It's a heat-seeking, rocket-propelled, fairly maneuverable missile that's really simple to bolt onto a land-based chassis. You just fit some launch rails to a rotatable battery on the back of a tracked chassis. That's all they had to do, and then boom.
Yeah.
Self-propelled short-range missile air defense vehicle. Done. And for long-range missile defense, they had the Hawk. There's a reason why the mobile version of the Hawk lasted all of 5 seconds, because they realized that the Hawk was cheaper as a land-based option. And yes, the mobile version of Hawk did sell in limited numbers, but there's a reason why the towed version was much more prolific, because Chaparral existed, and Chaparral fulfilled the sort of... For these shorter range air defense, all you would need a mobile vehicle for, Chaparral is much better. And it's also not vulnerable to SEAD in the same way that radar-directed vehicles are. Although that's not to say that infrared aren't vulnerable to SEAD missions, because there's a reason why Wild Weasels go looking for anti-aircraft weapons. They don't just rely on their harms to find missiles. They wait for things to shoot at them and then drop bombs on them.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about the Sidewinders. Is that a lot of the time you see them being mounted vehicles during the global war on terror, when they're not firing at large, high-altitude aircraft, they're firing at drones.
Well, the Chaparral has fallen out of use by now.
Yeah, but they've been bolting Sidewinders to the backs of Humvees and shit. Because it was a good way to take down small drones.
Yeah.
And it's just like, the Sidewinder can fire at helicopters if it's when the Chaparral's out. Nowadays it can take down a low-flying drone. Even with the altitude disadvantage. Let's be real. If it's a threat if it's a high altitude threat, why hasn't the Air Force dealt with it?
Yeah, basically. And of course we have Patriot for that if shit really hits the fan. Question.
Yeah, Patriot's fucking scary.
Question, why did the B-20... Oh, and then of course you've got THAAD, which just says, "Hi, I'm Patriot, but your worst nightmare."
Yeah, I'm Patriot, but I'm the one that Patriot wanted to be before Congress scaled me back.
Yeah. Question, why did the B-29 development cost so much more than the Manhattan Project? Simply put, because...
Engines.
yeah, the engines were a major
lot of
thing,
stuff.
but you're also talking about pushing the aircraft as a concept forward. You're not The atom bomb isn't pushing physics that much further forward than where physics actually was. It was just they were actually setting up their minds to actually go and fucking do it. To go and make an atom bomb. To cross the hurdles that physics knew existed to go and make that project happen. They weren't shoving physics that far forward. To go from where aviation was at the start of the B-29 program to where aviation was when the B-29 was a flying aircraft is a ridiculously further leap.
It's why you've got the various different Boeing not just Boeing, the super bombers they worked on directly led to help developments to work with the B-29.
And that and all those development projects are included under the cost of the B-29 program because they all feed into it.
Yeah. It's also a fallacy about the Manhattan Project being given the B-29. Because what they mean by that is like, oh, the enrichment of the uranium to make the bombs and the manufacturing of the bombs was cheaper than the B-29. But they don't count. Most of these figures don't tend to count the decades of infrastructure that went into it. Like, a lot of them... One of the big ones that people discount is the cost of stuff like the Tube Alloys project, which gave the US, this is how you enrich uranium with a centrifuge. This is how you get the material to make the bomb. That's not included in the Manhattan Project when you think of it, when you get all those figures of the costs. So, like, when you get the B-29, you get all the prelims to the B-29 and all the work that went into them. For the Manhattan Project, you just get the famous bit of the Manhattan Project. If you get what I mean. Like, you don't get the cost of the massive convoy that transported, I think it's several thousand tons of uranium from the Congo to the eastern coast of the United States. Which was fucking expensive. But it gave them bomb.
Right, so, moving on. Let me check YouTube. Oh, thank you, Knight. Knight has just given a very, very detailed reading on how Sheffield actually sank. The X-set that struck Sheffield hit her on a starboard side at deck level 2, travelling through the junior rating scullery and breaching the forward auxiliary machine room forward engine room. Bulkhead 2.5 metres with the waterline, creating a hole in the hull roughly 1.2 metres by 3 metres. Considering it was on the 10th of May in 1982, in an area of water 6,000 feet deep, on the edge of the exclusion zone size, HMS Sheffield capsized to starboard and sank, taking 20 of her 281 crew with her. I think the Argentinians, if it comes like... The Argentinians were successful in striking a maneuverable warship at sea with anti-ship missiles. In an area covered by Fleet Air Arm patrols. So, credit to them. But moving on. I don't want to go back too much. I want to keep plowing through questions as quickly as I can. So, done that. Do you think the CAC Sabre is the best 86 Sabre version ever? I don't think I don't know that much about the F-86 Sabre, to be honest with you. I think there's no best version of the Sabre, because the Sabre continues to change and adapt as its career goes on, and there are versions of the F-86 for almost every role imaginable, carrying multiple different armament fits, some capable even of carrying missiles. And I feel like it's one of those things where the best Sabre version will probably be the last Sabre version that was in active service before it was retired. Which, would therefore mean it's the longest.
I would actually put one down. Does the Super Sabre count?
No, he specifically said F-86 Sabre.
So yeah, and Super Sabre is a different class. So yeah.
Because the Super Sabre is essentially a Sabre with the wings swept back, and it was a supersonic version.
Honestly, I think Fleet answered it pretty well enough, though.
If you don't take the Super Saber, just the best saber.
Yeah. Question: is there a difference between how the U.S. Army artillery operates and U.S. Marine artillery operates? As far as I'm aware, in terms of force structure, battery composition, I don't think so. I don't think there's any difference. I don't think the chain of command is different. I don't know if how they call for fires is different. But in terms of battery composition and everything else, I think the U.S. Army as a whole follows a very similar procedure for how they organize artillery batteries. So the Marines have their battery composition the same as the Army. Like, there might be some small niggly things, but nothing that's really, you know.
Okay. One thing I do think is slightly different is that the Marines have a framework for light guns still, and the US Army doesn't.
Yeah, but that's less to do with operations and more to do with equipment in use. Yeah. I mean, the reason why the Marines have the 105 still is because it's easy to, like, it means you can fly in a battery of guns to the beach the minute after you've secured it, and have artillery on the beach in like 2 minutes after it's secured.
If remembering, that's the difference because they're subordinated to a different unit level.
Yeah, but that's
with much smaller batteries.
Yeah, but that's
I
only
think that's the only difference.
Only for the light guns, though.
Yeah, like I specified light guns fleet. If you remember correctly, the US Army doesn't have light guns anymore.
Yeah, maybe.
They have 155 or mortars.
Arizona doesn't violently explode at Pearl Harbor because the bomb was a dud. What happens next? She's probably settles on the bottom in Battleship Row, upright, is recovered and returned to service and serves throughout the Second World War and is then scrapped later on. Presuming nothing else happens at Pearl Harbor. Basically. That's a very simple one to answer. What kind of navy would the capital from the Hunger Games have? Well, the Hunger Games is the capital ideology, Pan Am, from the Hunger Games, is a nation too stupid to fundamentally exist. It's a thoroughly flawed society that should have balkanized and collapsed before it did in the books. Massively so.
It's also impossible to say because we don't know what's going on the rest of the planet.
Yeah. We know Panam exists. We know the rest of the world is somewhat buggered. We don't know anything more than that.
Because we also know that the setting of the Hunger Games is set in what is hinted at being a post-apocalyptic America.
No, it is. It is a post-apocalyptic America. That's why it's called Pan Am.
Yeah.
Pan America.
Yeah, but we don't know about the rest of the planet. Because I remember reading that it's not actually confirmed that it's post-apocalyptic. It's either an alternate timeline or a post-apocalypse. We don't know.
It's post-apocalypse because there are huge chunks taken out of the American continent. Like, it is definitely the American continent, but it has been rapidly altered by some form of event.
Yeah, but it might have just been that in this world the American continent was a different shape.
That's not how geography works.
Has that stopped alt timeline nerds before?
No, and I wouldn't give the author of the Hunger Games the honor of calling them an alt history timelinist. They're not that skilled.
Yeah, I mean, by that logic, I'm one.
It's an average. It's an average book at best.
Actually, no, never mind. I don't turn this to a book review because it's weird. If you look at it from haha teen drama funny, it's a pretty bad book. It does make some interesting societal commentary.
I mean,
especially about social media.
I would point that out, but I would also say it's also an excellent textbook on how not to write a dystopian empire, because it's so deeply flawed as a nation-state concept.
Yeah.
It's literally just designed to breed rebellion.
Yeah.
Question.
Books,
Yeah, basically, we don't know. As far we never see any ports. We know they have a fishing fleet, but we never see any ports. We never see any ships. We don't know what their naval technology is like. It's impossible to know. Question. What was the thought process on why the Navy had lots of designations for carriers during the post-World War II era, like CVA, CVB, CVS, and have gone back to the CV designation post-1975? So, the reason why they had CVA, CVB, CBS, etc. is because they had a fuck ton of Essexes, which they could refit into a fuck ton of different arrangements. Basically, there were as many flavors of Essex as you could imagine. So, attack carriers. I think CVB is bomber carrier, I think. I'll just have to check. So CVB was large aircraft carrier, which is probably... Yeah, so CVB was basically large aircraft carrier. There was...
BPL was small aircraft carrier.
Yeah, the CVS, I think, was... let me have a look.
Anti-submarine warfare.
Yeah, but the reason why so basically it was just to designate what the carriers were, and they could do this because they had so many Essexes. However, the reason you see CV return just as the sole designation post-1975 is because the Essexes are gone, along with all the wide deviations of what they did. The light carriers are gone, and all that's left are the midways and up. And at that point, they're all just carriers. They're not specialised in any way, so just carriers.
Yes, you have to remember that the fleets that came post-World War II for the US Navy and the Royal Navy were an absolute freak show of carriers.
Yep.
Like, you had support carriers, you had escort carriers, you had light carriers, you had the cruiser-based light carriers. And quite frankly, knowing that there's a cruiser-based light carrier in the theatre is very different from knowing there's a midway in theatre.
Yeah.
And sort of, when those carriers disappear and carriers standardise...
Because, I mean, even though the midways are less capable, you still have all of the capabilities, even though it's slightly less than you get out of a Forrestal or a Kitty Hawk on a midway.
It's not just that fleet, it's the task force they're bringing with them.
No, I know, but I'm saying, like, there's no reason to differentiate a midway from the other carriers.
Yeah.
Question. Can the Allison V17110 use the Merlin supercharged system? If yes, why didn't they try it? I don't know. I don't know. That's a specific engine question. That's one of my weak points. I don't know.
What's the aircraft? V1...
Well, that was the Allison, an engine in what? Which plane?
Allison V1710 use the Merlin supercharged system, and if yes, why didn't they try it? That's a very specific question.
Incredibly specific and a bit too niche for me.
Yeah, I think that's a question that you'd have to...
Correct.
You would have to, because none of... Like, that's not the sort of question you can go and find on the internet, but it's the sort of question that would someone would have to go away and
theoretically, I could. I just have to go look into a lot of potential books and all sorts.
Yeah. Actually, a good one to throw this at, if you've got the money for his Patreon, would be military aviation history.
Yeah.
Because he's done a lot of work on engines and their effects on aircraft, especially around World War II. Now, he more focused on the German side of things, but putting the Merlin-style supercharger in a different engine. And that's just way outside of what we can do, Moe.
So, next question. I'm relying on you guys to read the chats on both YouTube and Discord, because I'm just flying through the questions at this point. I am not reading chat.
Well, I'd assumed that we weren't taking questions from them.
No, we're not. But if anyone has anything related to the questions and stuff,
basically, basically, Moe, what's currently going on here is Fleet going through all the old questions.
Not all.
Or at least going through the document that has all the ones that have been recorded.
Okay. Want to expand on the MBT-80 story? Problem is, in order to do that justice, I would need more time than I have now. So I will leave that unanswered, and I will come back to that at a later date, because I would probably need the chieftain to answer that one. I will actually highlight that and say, held for chieftain ramblings in December.
Let's just say the MBT-80, it has a story that's only analogous development-wise to the T-80 and
it's not as
Challenger 1.
It's not as it's not as. And one thing I do know, the reason I don't want to dig into it is it's nowhere near as open as shut as the pop histories like to tell you. It's not. It's because the one thing I will just say this: the pop history that you all get told that MBT-80 was a really good tank, it was superior, it was a world beater, it was better than Challenger 1. And Challenger 1 was only taken on because the Shah of Iran fell and we had to take over the contract to save the factory. That is false. There is much more to it.
There's definitely true aspects to it.
No, this is...
on average.
Right.
Wait, no, let Flea finish.
There are true aspects in that story, but that pop history as a pocket history is false. There is so much more at play there that is not elaborated by that little gadget. Moving on. What if Kentucky...
No. Fox up.
Yeah.
That's the nature of it.
What if Kentucky... There's a reason why I'm parking it, because I don't have the time. What if Kentucky and Illinois were completed in 1947 and 1949, respectively? Well, first of all, I'm annoyed because you've taken the honour of Vanguard being the last battleship in the world, built and fit and commissioned off of her, and given that to Kentucky...
Doesn't Jean Bart have that, though?
No. Not really. Because Jean Bart was technically built beforehand.
Because she commissions in 53, doesn't she?
No, yes. So, Jean Bart is the last battleship commissioned, but Vanguard is the last to go through the process uninterrupted.
Anyway, continue the question.
So basically, you've got 2 extra Iowas. Basically, they won't be much changed. If they're completed in 47 and 49. They won't be much changed. Basically down to cost. If you're completing them in that period, you're looking to bring them into the fleet with the minimum changes possible to keep costs down. It's the only way they're going to get them that early. Because any other changes, because they deliberated over converting them into all sorts of things, and this is the thing. In order for them to arrive in 47 and 49. They have to be very little changed. Or any realistic changes push the build dates back into 48 and 50, or even further back than that.
Yeah. So it might be a bit controversial, but the Iowas probably don't stick around nearly as long.
Oh they do.
Because Kentucky and not Wisconsin.
Illinois, Kentucky, and Illinois.
Illinois.
They are Iowa.
They were essentially used as they were used as part ships.
I mean,
for Iowa's entire career.
Oh, that's very.
And they're part, and because you get stuff like Whiskey taking is it Illinois bows after she rams something.
That's true, but they could have just built another bow for her. But that was.
But it was cost.
And that was no. That wasn't.
Oh, Kentucky's.
Cost. No, that wasn't cost. That was expedience because it was during the war.
No, it was post-war.
No, it was during it.
The one I'm talking about is post-war.
No, it was during it.
But essentially, if you don't have Kentucky and Illinois keeping their parts costs of the Iowas actual build Iowas down, I don't see them lasting as long.
No, there's no change because you've now got 6 ships.
Yeah, unless they're scrapping those 2 to keep the 4 running.
No, because they'll choose. I do agree with Lee. They'll try and keep them all going.
Because you've got 6 ships. That's so much rotation potential. It's not even funny. You don't need you don't need the additional spares because you've got additional hulls.
Yeah, but they're surplus to requirements. That's
So
an issue
were
that
the-
I was
So
that
were
I was
the-
going to
but they were
mothball
kept-
because they're surplus.
Yeah,
to requirements.
that's not going to change. They'll still be around. It's not going to... Having 2 extra Iowas doesn't suddenly mean the US changes how it handles the Iowas. It's just got 2 extra hulls to use.
Yeah, but the point I'm coming at is that the Iowas were still expensive,
Yes, they
Yes.
were. But they could
and you're
do...
increasing the cost of them.
No, not really. Not by a massive degree. Not by an insane degree. There were a lot of the spares from Kentucky and Illinois ran out very, very quickly. They didn't last as long as you think they did.
Yeah.
But spare guns, spare barrels, spare loading hoists.
They'll probably still
wasn't-
get.
Yeah, that wasn't really Kentucky and Illinois that provided that.
And it's a lot of the engines that were made, engine parts, and turbine parts that were
And
made for
again,
those two.
again, it's not as big of a reserve as you're
Yeah.
thinking it is,
Also-
Fox.
But it's a reserve.
Yeah, but it's
But
not.
it's not.
gonna-
It's not one that will matter. I'm afraid.
Okay.
Okay, so that's been answered. Question: Am I dumb, or what's the role of the A6 and the A7? For the longest time, I thought they kind of do the same thing.
A6 and
One is the A6 Intruder, which was for many years the United States Navy's strike aircraft. That's what it was. It was the all-weather attack aircraft for the US Navy. The A7 is the Corsair II, which was the subsonic light attack aircraft designed for the US Navy. So one was a heavy attack aircraft, the other was a light strike aircraft / multi-role fighter, and it was
Right.
it was the thing that replaced the A4 Skyhawk. But that's
Isn't the
basically
Corsair 2 nuclear capable?
not sure. I think most U.S. aircraft were nuclear capable past 1970 when the small nuclear bombs appeared, aka the bombs you could just fit on a standard rack.
Yeah, the A7D was nuclear capable, apparently, according to Wikipedia.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. How about the A6?
I don't think the A6 was.
Complete.
Okay, how about the A37 Dragonfly and OVA-10 in ground attack roles? Well, the A37 Dragonfly and the OVA-10 Bronco basically fall under a role of what you call light CAS. And by that, what that is it's essentially exceedingly... So, well, the A37 Dragonfly and the OV-10 are what in the Vietnam War were called Army Cooperation Aircraft, and we now call counterinsurgency or light CAS aircraft. They're aircraft that are incredibly cheap to deploy and operate. They're usually completely dumb, or very nearly completely dumb, so very little, if any, sensor suite. Although that has been changing as the years have gone on. Very easy aircraft to fly, very forgiving at low speeds, really nice big open cockpit with really good visibility so you can see what you're looking at. And also an ability to carry far more ordnance than you would believe an aircraft of their size could actually carry. They did. So in the case of the A37, they did do the casserole very well. And now the A37 is still flown by the National Guard as a forward air controller, because again, the same things that made it. And apparently, it's still employed by a great deal of countries because the A37 is a cheap as chips light CAS aircraft. If you're operating in an area with no air opposition, an A37 with 6 cluster bombs, 2 rocket pods under its wings is just. Yes, I cast remove area for the cost of, and you could fly 6 to 8 missions for the cost of calling out a multi-role strike aircraft. With the OV-10, it gets even more aggressively cost-effective because you've got a pair of piston engines under the wings, and you can carry more ordnance.
But you're missing the best part of the Dragonfly fleet.
I'm sorry, like, the Dragonfly's nice, but I love the OV-10 even more.
The Dragonfly is manufactured by Cessna.
I know, it's funny.
And it's just sort of the yes. This is like the training. This is the training aircraft, people. This is sort of what's it?
Well, the thing is, they
What's that American washing machine company that makes washing machines
Electric.
and then
General
made an
Electric.
autocannon?
And,
Yeah.
no. They first made locomotives, then they made washing machines, then they made aircraft.
And then they made autocannons.
Yes. There's a reason they came to Cessna, because Cessna's aircraft were used as forward air controller aircraft in Vietnam, and they were being shoehorned into a light CAS role. So the army went to Cessna and said, "Can you build us a jet light CAS aircraft that can do this?" And Cessna said, "Hold my beer." The army did entirely the right thing, because Cessna knew exactly what the army needed and gave them a platform that filled exactly the role they needed it to fill.
I do wonder if Cessna also asked, did the army want them to train the pilots? Cessna do in-house training for pilots if you fly Cessnas?
It's probable. It may be. It's hard to tell. It's a good joke, though.
Yeah.
What was the thought process on the F-15E from an interceptor turn to attack or interdictor aircraft? They knew the USAF was going to replace the F-111, and they needed an easy option to convert an existing airframe into an interdictor or attack aircraft. When the F-15E is developed, the F-111 is still in service and will still be in service for some time to come. It's on its way out, but it's not on its way out yet. It's still got another decade and a bit of service still to go. The F-15E Strike Eagle is basically the birth of the true multi-role aircraft. Yes, it's more turned towards interdiction and ground attack, but it proves the concept that you can turn an interceptor into a strike aircraft and then still have it defend itself before or after it drops its ordnance. It was the birth of the multi-role aircraft concept. Basically. Question. How messy would US aircraft adoption be if McNamara didn't force all the branches to standardize? That is a hell of a rabbit hole. And that is impossible to predict. That's all I can say. That is impossible to predict. What would you have named the last three midways? So what did we get? We got midway class aircraft carriers. So what did we get?
Please, you have to name one of them most of the way.
So we got Midway, Franklin D. Roosevelt, Coral Sea. Honestly, honestly that's really easy, because we know what the next midways would have been if they hadn't been. They would have been Forrestal, Saratoga, and Ranger.
I think my name's better.
I would say just stick with what they were going to be.
Yeah. Because right, okay, next question. How would ship designs change if someone developed an open source method to make a force field that can remove all relative velocity from a projectile or missile once it gets hit?
Oh, it's this question again.
That is a massive rabbit hole. You've changed something so fundamental that it's virtually impossible to answer, and you've also not given a date when this happens, which makes it even more impossible to answer. So I'm sorry to say that. I'm going to change that from unanswered to unanswerable. Question: Why was New Jersey recommissioned for Vietnam while the others weren't? I don't know the specifics, but if I was to hazard a guess, I'd say that presumably when they were all inspected, she was found to be in the best condition and easiest to reactivate. That would be my answer, probably, for that one.
To just she was the one that had the most crew left.
Yeah, probably. One of those things. It'll be something really easy and straightforward like that. It won't be any complicated or anything emotional in it. It'll just be what was most convenient.
Or it could just be they just
And-
picked one.
And that's it. Apart from one question in Ramblings 43, we have, which is obviously the one I pushed back to the Chieftain's Ramblings. We've done Ramblings 43. So, Ramblings 44. So answered.
Hey Mo, we're reading chat, it's just we're not reading questions from chat. This is a catch up from Dry Dogs
They're
where
reading
Fleet's
chat.
gone
And, yeah,
sidetracked.
they're reading chat. And they're supposed to be telling me what you people are saying.
Sorry,
It's just
sorry.
it's
I'm
been
busy
spamming
conquering
with me.
Florida. Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been busy conquering Florida, and there's
Knight.
not been too much to comment.
Knight, I'm sorry to say I'm not answering questions or giving clarity right now. I am. You're
Trying to blitz
you're
through
probably
over 100
better off putting
questions.
put that question to Dr. Clark. That's one he'd probably be better able to answer than me anyway. Moving on. Have you heard of the Germans' idea of something called the Atlantic Cruiser? Something Scharnhorst size with 12 6-inch guns, 5 Ju-88s, and a giant pontoon runway to launch Ju-88s. Yes, I have. It was incredibly silly. There's a reason why it wasn't pursued. It's like a lot of German ideas. It was actually written down on paper. They actually considered it. No steel was cut. Because again, like a lot of these things, it was, yes, here's something we're considering. Totally honestly, don't send us to the Eastern Front, please.
It goes in the same category as the proposals to nuke the way through the Negev desert to make a second Suez Canal. You could do it, but it's not feasible. Fun fact, that was an actual proposal. Several of them. You even calculate how many nuclear weapons you would need. It was 347. Connect the Red Sea to the Dead Sea and then to the Mediterranean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Murray, he also ignored my suggestion for a Midway name, so...
Like, the whole Midway question kind of hurt you. Ooh.
Yeah. God damn it. I need to find a specific meme template for Dragon.
Uh-oh. So next question, Fleet, or
Yes. So next question is, do you think the Admiral Gorshkovs are better frigates than the Type 21, the Halifax class? Yes, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. The Admiral Gorshkovs of the Russian fleet are more capable in every metric, because they are fully general-purpose surface combatants, and are probably, aside from the Kirov in Russian service, the most capable surface combatant in the Russian fleet.
I would put an asterisk there, though.
What asterisks?
If what the Russians say about them can be taken for face value.
We have no reason to doubt what they've said.
Because they've lied about the Kirovs, they've lied about a lot of what their ships were capable of. They also lied about the Alphas.
I will point. What lie did they tell about the Alphas?
What was it? Missile tube count.
Okay, that's. Can they still do 42 knots submerged? Then they're still fucking terrifying attack submarines.
Yeah, but sort of, you get my point of the Russians have a habit of lying and embellishing things, which is where the asterisks come.
If even half the stats of the Gorshkov is true, as in she's half as capable as she actually is, she's still leagues more capable than a Type 21 or a Halifax. And Heck, their service in Ukraine has proved that they can deliver point missile strikes on targets inland. So they are perfectly capable combatants.
But it's also a case of Russians and Soviets had a habit of lying about things even when we knew they were lying.
We know they're
they were lying.
We know they lie, but not to that extent. It's not that they don't turn capable weapons into. Sorry, they don't turn shit into a world-beating weapon system. They turn a capable piece of equipment into a super duper massive MacGuffin. That's the difference here.
Have you heard of what's happening to the SU-57 fleet?
Yeah, we know.
I made a pun.
Yeah, we know. We know. Anyway, but yeah, Gorshkov's far superior to the Type 21 in the Halifax. Is Blucher considered the first heavy cruiser? No, she's an armoured cruiser. Heavy cruisers are a thing created by London. We've been over this countless times. Like, yes, I know there's a whole thing between large cruisers and small cruisers, but the heavy cruiser designation...
I'm going to entirely agree with you here, though, Fleet. Like, yeah, it was created during Washington.
London.
Yeah.
You might be able to technically retrograde it, but yeah.
She's the last armoured cruiser.
Yeah.
She is, Foxo. Any thoughts on 1404 doing a tour of the UK? Oh, we did that one. Here's a random one. Here's a random one. How many big boys will it take to replace the Iowa's engine? You physically couldn't.
Not in the same engine space.
No, as in what I mean is it wouldn't work. The boilers don't run at nearly the PSI required. You could not use enough to generate the steam pressure required to turn the Iowa's turbines. It is fundamentally impossible to use a locomotive boiler to especially a coal-fired one, like the big boys were originally, to generate enough steam. There's a reason why locomotive boilers in sets were used for destroyers and torpedo boats, and nothing else. Because that's about all the steam that's all about all they can generate steam for. You fundamentally can't. Hermes goes back, final countdown style. How do they fare in the Atlantic or Pacific? Do you mean Hermes from the Falklands War with the task
I presume they mean that. Oh no, it's in final countdown style. Instead of a Midway, HMS Hermes or Falklands War is sent back.
Well,
so it'll be just Hermes.
In that case, then, how do they fare in the Atlantic or the Pacific? Well, first of all, they are running on borrowed time because she's in the South Atlantic. She's got to go somewhere where she's useful. The Harriers are fundamental overmatch for literally anything in the skies. I don't care what it is, it dies to a Harrier. Especially if they've got all aspect sidewinders on. Basically, wherever she goes, she wins.
It might actually make SRAM useful.
Basically, that's what happens. Wherever she goes, she wins. Oh.
That's a horrible thought. Useful SRAM.
What if 6 Nimitz-class Cooper carriers and their accompanying escorts and supply ships with crews and supplies for 8 months non-stop operation?
I'm pretty sure I can guess who made this one.
Yeah. Are sent back in time to either early World War II or Vietnam. They basically, if you have that 8 months for non-stop operations, if it's World War II, the Axis navies are gone. All of them. In about 2 months. Then if they have modern weaponry, then then the Nimitz-class carrier groups dismantle the war economies of Germany and Japan over the next 6 months.
Also, to point out, Benno, the RAF would have SRAM in that timeline. So, a useful use case for SRAM. That's a horrible thought. Please, I'm just gonna go cry into my energy drink.
A
At the
super
thought of a useful SRAM.
a super battery is developed somewhere in the 1910s. They're more energy dense and small than chemical batteries. How does that affect submarine design and doctrine from that point onwards? Again, unanswerable question. You would need the specifics of what the batteries are capable of, what can they do, who has them, who doesn't, how do you build them. And again, it's such a radical difference. I can't tell what designers of the period would make or build. Not without talking to multiple award-winning naval historians. I ain't got them right now. What if all the F4s in the US Air Force were replaced by F-15A or Cs and F-16s, while the US Air Force, Navy and Marine Corps ones are replaced by F-14 Tomcat on a one-to-one basis? How does Vietnam go? Well, the Navy's fucked. Because most of the Navy carriers off Vietnam aren't super carriers. Some of them are, but not all of them. The Essex classes are fucked. The Midway's kind of fucked. So they've got to go somewhere to offload their Phantoms so they could do combat ops again. If they have their... I mean, the F-14s are okay in the dogfight, but I don't know how they do against the MiGs. It depends if the pilots are trained. It's one of those things that it's not a firm, yes, they win, no, they don't. It's a very complicated question. And I'm not entirely confident giving that a firm answer. I'd say overall it helps the United States, but I can't say for certain. Why did the RN have two names for ships named after Admiral Nelson? Nelson and Lord Nelson. I don't know, actually. That's a genuine... I don't know that one.
Oh, I think it's... If I'm remembering correctly, the Nelson you're thinking of isn't the only Nelson there are named ships after.
Possibly.
So it's a case of sort of you talk about two different blokes when they're named.
Okay, so... Right. Okay, 1 second. Allow me to ask this next question. Do you think the Warrior is a better CFV or IFV than the Bradley? 1 second. A momentary lapse into madness aside.
We know, you know, it wasn't momentary.
The Warrior is and has never been a better IFV than Bradley. Bradley has always stood head and shoulders above Warrior. Don't know why we adopted the bloody thing in the first place. Well, it's
There's one situation where Warrior is better though.
As a brick in a wall.
No, it's if the formation has been nuked.
Oh yeah, the NBC is slightly better, but still.
The NBC is better, and the Rowden autocannon can operate under the effects of EMP. The Bradleys can't. That's it.
Wow. Well, that's fantastic. That's
Very
fantastic.
niche situation.
And the Milan won't work, so if you find a tank, you're fucked. And it's also a case of you have to be in the range where the nuke won't instantly kill you, but it'll
also
still have this long-term effect.
Yeah. So, next question. You know how Starfleet calls the Constitution and Constitution refit a heavy cruiser while the Klingons call them a battle cruiser? Which definition do you favour? I'm out! I'm leaving that up to the experts.
You know, as me and Fox were currently discussing earlier, honestly, Star Trek doesn't really have battle cruisers. Really?
Red Effect would disagree with...
Te-
not Red Effect, sorry. Venom Geek would disagree with you there.
I disagree with Venom Geek on a lot of stuff.
He has Drax favour.
Yes. and I get some
Oh.
of his stuff. Just a lot of it I don't agree with after reading a lot of source material as well, and discussing with others who agree with me. But anyway,
Yeah, it's right.
it's definitely
CW.
not right.
Of
Keep in
course.
mind,
Uh,
the Klingons do basically intermix battle cruiser and heavy cruiser, because you've got the Katinga class battle cruiser or the Katinga class heavy cruiser. It's the same bloody ship with the same bloody layout. Basically, it doesn't really matter. I would say they're closer to heavy cruisers, even though the Miranda class, which is considered a light cruiser, has more powerful weapons, more internal storage. So take your pick.
So, next question. If there were any carrier
Let's see
battles in
those,
1943 in this episode, do you think USS Robin can hold her own against Japanese carriers in a carrier battle, since Enterprise, Saratoga, and the Essexes aren't in the area yet or in repairs? She has US fighters with British fighter direction. She has British pom-poms and 4-5 along with US escorts. The Japanese strike wings are fucked!
But no, it's still the only one that can get through. The big question is, do they figure out her gimmick?
What, do you mean that she has actual fighter direction and decent and a
Yeah.
really heavy AA battery?
Because Robin's victorious, isn't she?
Yeah, she's victorious, yeah.
Yeah, it's, do they figure out that she's got an armored deck?
I
If I
mean,
remember correctly,
I mean, I'm sorry,
Japanese doctrine.
those 4-5s are going to be taking fucking names.
They will.
She has a massively heavier AA battery than any other carrier in theatre.
Yeah, but to some degree, the aircraft always gets through.
No, I agree. That's true in this period.
It's very much a case of, do they figure out that but the only thing that's going to affect her really is the torpedo bombers.
And I mean, and if they do figure that out, then they're in an even worse position because they've just enabled the fighters to focus. Because
Yeah, it depends on how long does it take them to figure it out. Or do they make the mistake of thinking they've sunk her because they've hit her with dive bombers?
And then she just casually gets up the mops and brushes the deck clear. Flight ops continue.
Yeah. Because the dive bombers won't do negligible damage, they can still hurt Victorious, but she's much better protected from them.
Yeah, like I said, Phoenix does say it depends entirely. Hang on.
Yeah. It specified the
You're
force,
just gonna
though,
try and
wasn't
bring him
it?
up.
Yeah, I really should.
It was specified
He's
the
here.
force.
Yeah, I really should bring him up. He knows
It's
things.
it's up to you, and if Phoenix is able to.
Yeah, he knows things.
Hello there. Does my mic work?
Yes,
Yep.
it does. Phoenix knows things.
Excellent.
Phoenix knows the great things. I'm actually glad he's here. Thoughts on the F8?
Yeah.
Just going to. As you can see, Phoenix, I'm trying to absolutely power through questions at this point. Thoughts on the F-86 Saberdog? Do you think they're trying to replicate F-86 performance into a dedicated interceptor? And do you think it's a stopgap until the F-102 or F-104 enter service? And also to cover the cancelled XF-90 and the nuclear rocket-equipped F-89. F-86D Saberdog.
That's out of my wheelhouse, unfortunately.
Yeah, probably mine as well. I think it's the one with the chin-mounted rocket launcher. As far as I'm aware, Saberdog was basically a stopgap. They said, okay, stretch Saber a bit, give it a radar, give it some chin-mounted rockets. It'll serve for now.
Yeah.
AM-54, first ever active BVR missile? Question mark.
54. Hang on a second.
Now I'm just gonna look
What do
at
you mean?
myself.
You mean AIM 54, do you think they mean?
Yeah, that's what I said. AIM. AIM 54.
Oh, I missed the I. I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
No,
Yeah, the $1 million.
that's my fault.
Yeah, the $1 million missile.
What? What else would even be competing with it? I mean,
I don't think there is anything that can.
yeah, no, because I mean, like, technically Sparrow is a beyond visual range, but ... I mean, hang on, I forget that even comes out later. No, well, Sparrow's earlier, but yeah, I'm not an air-to-air missile expert by any means, so
I am looking at it and I can't see any other missile that can come close to BVR except the Phoenix in the period where it first enters service. Okay, next question. How would you design a treaty cruiser? Well, that's a very open-ended question, so I'm going to give a very open-ended and vague answer. It depends entirely who I'm designing it for and when I'm designing it. If it's right after Washington, I'm very limited because I have very inefficient technology. If it's right prior to the collapse of the treaties, I have slightly stricter treaties, but I have far more leg room in what I can design because technology has advanced so much. If I'm designing for the Japanese or the Italians, I just don't care and just design a cruiser that looks right and it can pass inspection at a distance. If I'm designing for the French, I cry in a hole until Algeria comes along. If I'm designing for the British, I build a county and that's it. And if I'm designing for the Americans, I decide armor is an extra for the first few years and then decide to build the Baltimores because why not?
Well, presumably the one uniting factor of all of these is that you want them to float.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it's just the variation in what each navy valued is just going to take you so many places. So it's really hard to narrow it down. It has to be like, what navy am I building for, and what is their doctrine, and yeah. And also in what period, because for some navies, they're changing their doctrine over time. So what they want to build in one decade is different from the next decade, even independent of, say, the technology available. So,
you have to remember, floating is overrated. You should join the submarine corps.
What are we, Sakoof?
Well, no. Even in the case of the submarines, you want at least a little bit of floatability because you have to come back up.
It doesn't float at all. Well,
unless you're
Russian. At that point, stick some treads on it and we'll just go across the bottom.
All I'm saying is, I want my heavy cruiser to do a Vasa when it leaves port.
Well, in that case, then you design, or what was she called? In that case,
anything Japanese?
Yeah, I was going to say Megami.
Megami's not a good parallel for Vasa. Because Megami didn't fall apart. Vasa didn't fall apart.
No, Vasa didn't fall apart. She healed over.
Yeah, she just rolled over. Megami fell apart, didn't she?
No, initially. She was badly damaged. But the thing is, it's the closest thing in the period. It's as close as you get.
Yeah.
So we're now on to 45. So the first question from 45 that was unanswered. Could USS Massachusetts or USS North Carolina receive the same upgrades the Iowas did? They could receive a basic version of the 80s upgrade package the Iowas did. The problem you've got is that they don't have nearly the same level of displacement free or the same level of space that the Iowas do. You can give them a basic version of the same package, but it's not going to be nearly as extensive.
Yeah, I mean, it would depend on you'd have to math things out with the deck area. I mean, you potentially could find more space by removing more of their armament. I mean, like the 5-inch guns and such.
Yeah,
but
yeah. If you
want to put the same number of cruise missiles, but it's the problem that you run into really is just it's a similar manning requirement to an Iowa. You might have more difficulty fitting stuff onto it. They're just straight up slower, that's going to be a concern.
Oh no, completely. I think it's just down to the fact of could they rather than should they.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you can. I think Phoenix makes an excellent point there because I think if they were going to convert them, a prerequisite is some or all of the 5-inch 38 mounts have to go.
Yeah. And then the other problem is that they're just not around anymore either. By the time you get to the 80s, so
they're either museum ships or scrapped.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean that whatchamacallit, and the museum ships are not really in a recoverable state. So
no, So that's answered. Question. So why did the U.S. designate the Buckley and Evarts class destroyer escorts as frigates since they had 3-inch main guns? Obviously, the John C. Butler class destroyer onwards had 5-inch guns, so they were more fitting to be designated destroyer escorts. The U.S. Navy didn't operate frigates during the Second World War. That was a British designation. You don't see the USN readopt the frigates until after the Frams designate what the USN's new frigates will be. Because this is the thing people forget. A lot of the Fram conversions, a lot of the Fram cans basically show the USN, okay, this is what a ship around this size can do and still be useful. Okay, alright. And then you see a lot of their frigates come out and they're like, this looks a lot like a purpose-built Fram can.
Well,
It's not quite,
not exactly.
But it's not
I
exactly,
mean,
but it is.
yeah, because I mean, I think if you're looking at the evolution, like, because the U.S. Navy just bring in the frigate in the 1950s, right? But they use frigate in the classical sense, so it is actually referring to guided missile ships that slot between cruisers, guided missile cruisers, and guided missile destroyers. So which guided missile destroyers basically all Tardar ships. The cruisers were intended to be Talos ships while that was still a thing, and the frigates were all Terrier ships. And technically, the last true guided missile cruiser the U.S. builds is actually Long Beach herself. And she had both Terrier and Talos. But everything after that was all frigates. And they kept that up until 1975. And the French actually used the exact same definition of frigate. The Dutch did both definitions of frigate because the Dutch are weird like that. But when it comes to the Fram cans replacement, because the Fram cans for the United States, they were still destroyers, like fleet destroyers, so they could be used for ASW.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah,
I'm not.
so,
I'm not saying...
so their replacement was actually the Spurance class destroyers, because those were supposed to be doing fleet ASW. Whereas when they went back to, like, say, frigates, these were replacing really destroyer escorts, and a lot of navies, other navies too, also destroyer escort just gets directly turned into redesignated as frigate. In the 1950s and 60s. I mean, the Italians, I think, were the first. I think the Dutch were the first to adopt it outside of the Commonwealth. Then the Italians did it in 57, the Germans did it in 65, and I forget for the rest, but...
basically there you go. Phoenix has really hammered that question home. If you were in command of the entire Starfleet task force at the Battle of Wolf 359, how would you try to win? Borg cube, very big and scary. Run away!
We can't run, though. It's on direct course to Sector 001, aka Earth.
you jump to light speed directly into it.
Ram it!
Doesn't work with Star Trek.
Ram it.
Well, we'll make it work because, I mean, it wasn't a thing in Star Wars before they did it in the movies anyway, so we'll just do that to Star Trek.
Yeah, just...
But the whole point is that...
You fly really far away in real space, then you fly really, really fast at it. Because theoretically there's no limiting
keep in mind,
acceleration in space.
The problem is...
I'm taking the piss, to be clear. Like, I understand it's different physics in different universes, so...
But, I mean, no, but seriously,
the problem is we don't ramming it wouldn't work.
It's a Borg cube. It can't adapt to a physical object, slamming it in the face.
Yes, it can.
Fleet did adapt it to photon torpedoes, basically, which is an antimatter explosion. And also, you've got a bigger problem. More than just the adapting, it regenerates.
Yes, you just hit it with more ships until it stops resembling.
You've only got 40 ships.
Okay, well, that means I've got 40
And also, you're now willing to sacrifice all of these ships
compared
over
to
10,000 lives.
Yes, compared to the loss of sectors.
On an attack that might not do anything.
None of the attacks might not do anything. This is the one that might have the chance of doing the most anything.
Yeah, but at least when you were there, it stopped for quite a long period of time before it moved on. You gave the time for Enterprise to get into position.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with Moe. You don't go in as a wave. You go in as a unified task force.
Can one of the ships at least ram it?
Why?
I don't know. I just want to try.
Ramming it would be a method of last resort, as in, oh dear, life support's failing. Well, get the warp core ready to detonate. Prepare the antimatter storage. Arm all torpedoes. Then go for ramming speed. Make sure you've got as much boom as possible in your ship.
You could try doing what we talked about while driving home.
Which one?
Just get fast enough in real space with one of the ships.
That could work.
Just the rest of the fleet is a distraction. You just get this one ship up because of there's no limit to acceleration in space.
The problem is a Borg cube is 3 kilometers cubed. It's a big ship with a lot of mass. It's not that easy to destroy.
True.
Yeah.
So
there's a reason why they fail, and there's a reason why after this ship they start designing new warships because, oh god, we need to fight these in the future.
Okay, so next question. Is it possible to upgrade the engine on SPD Dauntless? I mean, it already was from the aircraft it started out as related in Rex's Hangars video on the SPD Dauntless. But But as far as I'm aware, the Dauntless the Dauntless as it was in 42-43 was basically the aircraft at the end of its development cycle. Like that was peak Dauntless. Like that was the GOAT Dauntless. Like that's the 600-pound bomb dropping, Japanese carrier busting, Battle of Midway winning Dauntless.
You have to remember, the more powerful engine you put in a aircraft, the significantly more you have to redesign the airframe. At that point, just
And this is an aircraft that's
build a
already
new
had,
airframe.
and this is an aircraft that's already had a significant redesign to have a new engine fitted to it. So, next question. What if HMS Warrior with crew and coal was sent back in time and appeared at the Battle of Trafalgar? The French fleet evaporates in a hail of gunpowder and explosive shells. It's not even funny.
Now, I noticed you say the French fleet, so are you asserting that the Spanish fleet will suddenly conquer the entire planet after that? Or no, I'm just kidding.
Sorry. The Franco-Spanish fleet evaporates in a hail of gunpowder and explosive shells.
Yep. Really, no comparing the steam-powered ironclad to what was around in 1815. I mean, geez.
Warrior's untouchable. She's even her extended plates that weren't designed to resist anything are unbreachable by the cannon of the day.
Yeah. Her one threat is, this is still the era of the boarding party.
Warrior was designed with that sort of thing in mind. She's actually a bit too high-sided to be boarded by anything other than perhaps Santissima Trinidad.
I thought she's equivalent to a size-wise to a 3-decker, essentially.
No, she's just that little bit taller. So
she can deal with them putting it a little bit taller, because she's aligned with design, if need be, to go put half a deck.
Yeah, Foxo. Here's the thing. She has to consent to that. She has to consent to be boarded. There's no way for
But where do things happen?
No. In this case, there is literally no way she can be boarded. Even under even under sail alone, she's handier than any of the other ships. With her engine involved, there's nothing they can do. They can't catch her. They can't stop her. They can't disable her. She's your typical officer. All ramblings are recorded and available on YouTube, including this one. What if Canadian nukes? When? That is
very open-ended.
Yes, too open-ended.
When and why?
Obviously, Canadian nukes in the War of 1812.
Ah, yes. Washington, D.C. be gone. Fucking I can't. Oh, dear.
The only way to stop.
Yeah, okay, that one's a bit too open-ended. I'm just going to put that under unanswerable and move on, because it's one of those questions that's too open-ended, doesn't have the context.
I mean, I think the easiest way to say is just like, well, yes, we kicked them some B-61s during the Cold War for NATO nuclear sharing, and then that's it, because I don't think they're in nuclear sharing, but they theoretically could be.
Canada has nukes.
Because they have nukes in the same way that, Germany, the Netherlands, and Italy has nukes.
Yeah. Question 7. Do you think the Clemson and Wicks class came a bit too late for World War I and would be a good destroyer design for World War I if they came into service in 1916? If the Clemson and Wicks are in service in 1916, they are one of the best destroyers in the world at that point.
They're good, but not the best.
I said one of the best. I said sharing podium with the British.
It's just, if I'm correct, the flush deck designs are already on their way out by the time they come in, even if they came in 16. Because when you get to that sort of size, the flush decks don't really work as you want them to.
There are a lot of them.
Yeah? Just because you have a lot of them, don't make them good. Or the best.
Yes, your destroyer flotilla has 4 extremely good destroyers. Our destroyer flotilla has 8. It has 8 good destroyers. Who's gonna win that fight? Oh yeah, it's gonna be us with 8.
Well, it depends.
Not in that situation.
Oh, with the Wicks and Clemson, it's less 8 and more like 80.
Yeah,
because there were just so fucking many of them.
it's like,
But
ha! It comes over the horizon. I brought the U.S. Navy. Where are the battleships? You can't see them behind the destroyers, but they're there. Oh,
Okay,
this one is a Phoenix
the
question.
Chadwell's around
Yeah.
during the 16th.
This one is definitely a Phoenix question. Why did they remove the Sea-Wiz on the front part of the Ali Burke class bridge for the later flights of Burks? Are they going to install laser weapons in that position?
so the main reason it was they stopped fitting it was basically ESSM. Well, when that started being rolled out, was seen as basic. It was seen actually as a CWIS replacement to a certain extent because the minimum range on those things is so short. So for a lot of Burks, they just tend to carry them up forward, and that was their sort of stand-in for CWIS. Unless they didn't have to put anything on that forward deck, they could leave it for anything else. I believe it's going to vary for Burks now. So a lot of them, they're doing a very large buy of RAM or Mark 49s. So a lot of older Burks are going to be refit, so they have RAM 4.5, which is a considerable improvement in their air defense for self-defense. Not all of them, though, and later ones will keep it open, which in all likelihood will probably be for laser-based dazzlers and such. Potentially hard kill lasers too against like Hellcap if that manifests. But for the most part, laser systems now are just dazzlers, blinding for whatever electro-optical system. Potentially IIR. That is a thing that can be done.
I want my
and burning out small drones in USVs. But
I want my tripods. I want to go around bashing people's head in with lasers. Oh dear. CRAM is an incredibly funny thing.
oh yeah, well, it's always funny to see the videos of those things going active, over bases in Iraq and Afghanistan and such.
Yeah,
Just-
they exchanged the pew pew. They exchanged the rat-a-tat-tat for the pew pew.
Mm.
Oh dear. So next question. What if a Klingon task force was at Wolf 359? I don't know. Again,
It dies just as quickly.
Basically, yeah.
Well, if anything, it might die quick. Honestly, this is the task force where you have your ramming.
Yeah.
Now-
Excellent.
So I'm not a Star Trek person, so remind me, is Wolf 359, is that the one where it was basically they ended the season finale with a ton of ships coming in, more than, like, the animators put more ships in than they were supposed to be, so they had to figure out between seasons how to have all these ships destroyed so they could set up the scenario afterwards, or is this something completely different?
This is, I think, the different one. This is the one
Okay.
where it was the single Borg cube versus 40 starships.
And the Borg cube
Ah,
just
okay, so
walks
that
And
was
away.
different.
we only ever see the wreckage of them.
Yeah, the Borg cube just walks away with it, literally.
Okay.
Depending on which source you go off, either 1, 2, or 3 ships survived.
Whoopee.
One of which is because of Q's involvement.
That doesn't surprise me. That fucking British bastard. Wait, what?
Well, yeah, but that's because he teleported the son of one of the crew members who died on Wolf 359 back to Wolf 359 so he could watch his father die,
Oh.
but also allowed him to mess with the timeline a bit, resulting in being assimilated, all sorts of things. Till eventually, finally, Q just goes, right, no, you've survived the scenario, right, teleports you and your ship back to when it's the time for the Star Trek First Contact movie. And
Right.
confusion continues.
Right, that makes sense. Last question.
No, it doesn't.
So, question. Would the US use the new quick sink bomb kits to sink Chinese ships if there's a war with China? Or are we going to see old-fashioned bombs being used to sink ships again? I mean, I would question the fact why using bombs to sink ships. Harpoon exists.
It really depends on what you're engaging, what munitions you have on hand, what the enemy air defense is like. All of this stuff is going to be depending on, or is going to impact what munitions you actually use. Because there are plenty of low-end Chinese ships, right? That, frankly, you could very easily use something like even like a toss bomb something small at them. Like, for example, an O-56A Corvette. Its sole air defense comes down to essentially the HQ-10 launcher with only 8 rounds. So a single F-35B, a B, mind you, not even an A or a C with this larger internal base, right? It's a single F-35B can have 8 SBDs, 1 or 2 internally carried. You could even use the Spear 3 as well. They can also carry 8 internally. And you've just managed to successfully saturate the air defenses of that corvettes. So if you send 2 of those aircraft after that corvette, it is basically a guaranteed kill if that corvette has nothing else to protect it. So, and that again, these are much smaller weapons and even like quick sync stuff. So there are plenty of options for killing ship, especially if they're already cripples or if they have limited air defenses. Not everything is, especially when it comes to the Chinese, not everything is a top tier DDG. As much as the Chinese have modernized their fleet, they only have so many of those. So
Yeah.
it's a different story to say tackling in the U.S. Navy, where it's like every surface combatant is basically an Aegis destroyer.
Yeah, like have fun with that one.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah, everything has SM2MR. Have fun.
yeah. Dr. Clark isn't impressed. He thinks they're not good enough for the President's mission. Like basically, the USN
With
has
the Burks?
Yeah. He basically says the USN has no middle ground. It either sends a Burke or it sends a carrier task force. There's nothing to say we're more pissed off with you than a Burke would mean. Like there is no middle escalation.
Oh no, there is other escalation options. It's called having an Ohio surface somewhere nearby, and tipping that hand. We do that sometimes.
Yeah, I know. It's more
But no,
like
this is a fair point. Like this is part of why LCS exists. This is part of why they want the upcoming frigates to exist. Especially because the frigates, like something like a Constellation, has enough of the same air defense capabilities of a Burke, just a smaller scale, to where
so basically
you could put them in the Red Sea and they can do the same escort job as a Burke, but just do it cheaper. It's just the only thing is they have less magazine depth, so they'd have to go back sooner for reloads. But if you look at the actual expenditure rates of a lot of the Burks, you wouldn't actually run a Constellation dry in the Red Sea, but
it basically means that the Burke can then step up. So basically, if a Constellation shows up, you go, we're pissed at you. If a Burke shows up, we're really pissed at you. If a carrier task force shows up, stop what you're doing.
Yeah. Granted, you don't always have to physically send ships to get those messages across.
It was more when you choose to do that.
Yeah.
So it's been an hour, and I'm going to end this rapid fire one here. So every Friday there will be more of this in future. I am going to obviously next Friday as well. Sorry for the later start. We should be starting earlier next week. I was just absolutely knackered this week. I had to go and take a 2-hour power nap before coming on today. For those of you in the chat, so specifically Moe and Benno, don't go anywhere. I have uses for you. Don't go anywhere.
Run. It's your only hope.
Fantastic.
Adding my way to the panel when?
At some point. If he wants to come up, he can. At some point. I'm probably going to deal with that. We are dealing with the... also, you're not taking questions.
I'm pretty sure Phoenix is answering the question in chat.
Ah!
That one in chat if I have to, but...
Anyway, we are done for today. Moe, Benno, I need to see you in event room 1 quickly. If you don't have anything else urgent planned.
Back.
Yes, just don't run him too ragged, for God's sake. I need him to be alive.
Oh no, he's done something annoying. He's playing Old World Blows.
Oh. Right, anyway.
With Toaster.
I'm sorry, Florida's been united.
Thank you very